Our next in-person mastermind is coming up this fall, and we're heading to Vegas. We're kicking off this mastermind with an in-person tour at Zappos downtown Las Vegas campus, where you'll learn their strategies behind company culture, core values, employee engagement, and customer service. Looking outside the legal industry for business concepts and strategies allows you to gain fresh perspectives and innovative solutions that can be applied to improve and differentiate your firm's operations. Following the tour are the mastermind hot seats. Every attendee has the opportunity to dive deep into their business obstacles with their mastermind group and coach. We believe that nothing beats working on your firm in person, so join us in Las Vegas on November 7th and 8th. This is your chance to break through barriers, spark new ideas, and accelerate your law firm's success. Limited spots are available. Visit maxlawevents.com for full event details and to grab your ticket today.
Run your law firm the right way. This is the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Your hosts, Jim Hacking and Tyson Mutrux. Let's partner up and maximize your firm. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jim Hacking.
And I'm Tyson Mutrux. What's up, Jimbo?
Oh, Tyson, how are you doing, man? How did court go?
It went well. It was quick. It was one of those in and outs, and then I got to have coffee with Josh Evans between podcasts, which was fun. I went gym, court, podcast, coffee with Josh, and then back podcast again. So that's why I'm in the back of my truck right now. It's because I just had coffee with Josh. But yeah, it sounds like you're getting your energy back, which I'm happy to hear.
I'm faking it till I make it, but I am feeling a little better. That headache I had this morning. So, Steve, you don't know, I'm on the back end of COVID, my third time of having COVID despite being vaccinated. It's the worst one I've had. So, Tyson, you want to go ahead and introduce Steve?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite bios that I will ever read for two reasons. One, it is very short. The other one is just the content of it. And please forgive me, Steve, if I pronounce your name wrong, but it's either Steve Mehr or Mehr.
It's Mehr.
I was going to go with Mehr, but I was thinking maybe Mehr. But Steve Mehr is not just an average personal injury lawyer, but a businessman first. That's the bio. That's it. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
How's it going? Happy to be here.
So, Steve, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them sort of who you are, how you came to practice law, and then build what you've built.
Okay, yeah. I am currently the co-founder of Sweet James Accident Attorneys. We're headquartered out here in Southern California, and we operate right now in California, Nevada, Arizona, and just launched a Dallas office in Texas. We have about 400-ish employees, 50 lawyers, and we're probably one of the largest, if not the largest, single event personal injury law firm on the West Coast.
So, Steve, I kind of want to jump right in. Something like this takes time to build, right? It's not something that you can just dump a bunch of money in. I guess you could. You could dump a bunch of money into it and kind of like a startup, but that's usually not how these things evolve. So, at what point did you start to realize, okay, you all were onto something, and you started to see that growth where you weren't just a few people in an office? You're at 400. So where did you start to see that progress, and what was it that started that?
Right. Well, actually, we did launch the firm in 2019, so it's a fairly new firm. But it's not my first rodeo. I used to be one of the principals of Jacoby & Myers and kind of brought that brand back to life on the West Coast. And I had an exit in end of 2018. And then in 2019, I partnered up with James, and I had a concept, and we aligned on that concept. And he's like, what are we going to call this thing? Bergner, Mehr, Bergner. And I'm like, no, we're going to go with Sweet James, which was his nickname. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I think this is going to work. So we were, in 2018, the laws, I believe, changed in California where they allowed trade names finally. So we launched this thing in 2019, but we had a template, so we were able to scale very fast. And when COVID happened, it happened, within 7 or 8 months of us being partners. So, which was kind of a bad omen for a car accident firm, especially in California. No one was on the road. But I actually saw that as an opportunity, since I knew the market well, and I knew that grabbing market share would be very difficult. So COVID was kind of that window that allowed us, while everybody was retreating, we picked up the best radio spots, the best billboards, signed permanent contracts with them, drove, tens of millions of dollars into, traditional media to help establish the brand. And when we exited COVID, it kind of just catapulted the firm. So we added 200 of our staff just got added last year. So we've been just, growing very fast. And it's not easy, obviously, being in the type of field that we're in, but, definitely believe in, staying hyper focused in a niche. And, we definitely niche down, and we're just single event. We do car accidents, we do slip and falls, wrongful death, and that's about it. We don't do mass torts, we don't do environmental disasters, class actions. So we're very narrow in what we do, but we're very good at it. And we have about 45 teams that are lawyer led, and 25 of them are litigation. 20 of them are pre-litigation. We do trials. We got $23 million last year as a jury verdict. We settled a case just 2 months ago, right before trial, for $13 million. So, kind of assembled a team of very talented people, and that's it. But yeah, it is, to kind of answer your question, it did take a lot of capital in order to scale this fast, and it does take a lot of talent. So I kind of look at my role as chief talent officer. I'm running a talent agency, if anything. So,
Steve, tell us what it looked like sort of on day one, and then what you envisioned for, say, the first 18 months, or what your plan was pre-COVID.
Right. Well, we had to change really fast, obviously, but initially it was to have a better mousetrap, so to say, from a branding and marketing perspective. It obviously, everything starts there. If you don't have clients, then you don't have work and you don't have revenues. So the initial steps were to just kind of create that better mousetrap from a branding and marketing perspective, and that started with the name and the logo. And I know it's a little bit quirky, but it was designed to just kind of stand out. So we get calls pretty much weekly where people are saying, I see your ads everywhere, and I always thought to myself, sweet James, what a silly name for a lawyer. But when I got in a car accident, it's the only name that would pop into my head. And to me, that means, the advertising's working. So
with that number of people, it's like, it almost like boggles my mind. Like, it's just a lot of people, a lot of offices to manage. But I want to focus more, I think, on the recruiting side of things. How do you manage your recruiting, and how do you make sure that you've got a good pipeline of people that are going to be a good fit for the firm? Because that's keeping a culture with that many people is probably pretty difficult. So how do you make sure that you, with that number of people, you're able to recruit the right type of people into the firm?
I think one of the keys is you have to always be hiring, even when you don't need people. And the reason is, let's say you need to hire a lawyer today. The odds that lawyer that is qualified, that matches your culture, is actually looking for a job this week or next week is probably pretty slim. So if you're always hiring, so we always have ads for pretty much every position, and we have a very large database of resumes that are going through. And if we find a rock star or someone that's super talented, we hire them. Even if we don't have a position for them, we hire them, we bring them on the team, we'll figure out what to do with that person. So we're always hiring and accumulating resumes. So when we need to fill a position, we generally will go then back into our database. And if the resume looked good, they'll usually do 1 or 2 rounds of interviews, even if we don't hire them, but we have all that data. So that makes the hiring process much easier. So right now we're in a spurt of hiring additional pre-suit paralegals, and essentially my head of HR/recruiting, it's like, I interviewed these dozen people. Which ones do you think would be a good fit? I'm like, we'll bring them in for another round of interviews. And so that's definitely been a key to being able to scale fast and find talented people. It's just something you do year round, and that's an investment you have to make year round. So we're always running, whether it's ads on Indeed or, messaging people on LinkedIn. This is a year round, like day-to-day thing. So
what do you think most lawyers and law firm owners get wrong when it comes to growth? Clearly you embrace growth from the outset. We talk to a lot of lawyers who are scared and reluctant and sort of shy away from growth and specifically fast growth?
I think making the investment in the people is a scary thing, to build teams when you don't always have the work. But part of my job here and my primary job here is really to be working on next year. So modeling out, how many teams do I need to bring online? And you don't always get it right, and then you got to make those tough decisions. And sometimes we've had to collapse a team or two because we were too early. And that's not always a great position to be in. But the only way you're going to catch hypergrowth or be scaling is if you're always multiple quarters ahead. And what does that mean? That means I'm making investment before it's necessary. And I think people would rather just kind of take their pay and not put that money on the table and bet, and that actually makes our job much easier. If I look at us as a hyperscaler in the legal space. So I don't have a lot of competitors that are doing those type of things. So, if I can give advice to people, if you're in a market and you have some traction with clients, just really, it makes sense to make that investment, and make sure you niche down, you're hyper-focused, but you got to invest in people. And I almost always think you got to have about 10% more staff than you need. So if you got 20 people in your firm, you probably should have 2 people that are twiddling their thumbs waiting for the extra work to come. And you're always training them and doing whatever. And at our size, obviously we have a lot more people than is necessary, but they're there to catch the next wave of growth.
So, Steve, you say something that I found really interesting in the survey that we sent to you before the podcast, and you said that there's so much opportunity in today's legal environment to build the law firm of the future. And the most interesting part of that sentence to me is the law firm of the future. I wonder what you believe the law firm of the future looks like, because I wonder if it looks like it is now, but I'm guessing that it isn't because you put that in there. So what does the law firm of the future look like?
The easiest way I could, make some kind of connection is look at where medicine was 15 years ago. You had a lot of small solos. You had a few large partner practices, and then they got gobbled up by either healthcare, insurance companies or hospitals, and they've turned kind of into these conglomerates where now these providers are generally multi-state, and they're ran much more efficiently and professionally like a business, and they have actual back offices and things like that, where a lot of these solo practitioners didn't have that in medicine 15 years ago. And I think legal is going through the same transition right now. And there's going to be, winners and losers. And I think, look, if you're a small solo practitioner, I think you're probably going to be okay. But this middle of the market, these firms that have, I'd say, from 30 to 100 employees, those are the ones that are really either going to shrink or they're going to have to consolidate and scale up. And not all of them are going to be able to do that, because today, to be at scale, you have to be top of class in your...
Are you tired of the marketing guessing game? Does your website feel more like a digital billboard than a client magnet? If you're nodding along, you're not alone. And it's time to stop the uncertainty and start getting real results. Let's talk about your marketing spend. Are you just shelling out money every month and crossing your fingers? Do you ever wonder what impact your marketing is really having on your revenue? Well, it's time to take the guesswork out of the equation with Rise Up Media. We've been working with them for over a year, and the feedback from our fellow members has been fantastic. Rise Up Media is here to take your marketing to the next level. They'll even perform a full audit of your online presence, giving you the good, the bad, and even let you in on what your competition is up to that you're missing out on. And the best part, there's no obligation, no catch, no pressure. If you decide to work with them, their contracts are month to month. That's right. No long-term commitments tying you down. So what are you waiting for? To learn more about how Rise Up Media can transform your firms, visit riseupmedia.com/MaxLaw, and Rise is spelled with a Z. riseupmedia.com/MaxLaw.
Business, like we have a business intelligence unit that handles our data. We have 5 in-house software programmers constantly, massaging what our needs are. So, these capabilities have to be built into what the law firm of the future looks like. And, we've deployed AI in our mailroom. So right now we could scan 1,000 documents. 900 of them will end up in the right client's file with the right naming convention. And the 100 that the AI gets confused on, it'll flag a human being and say, hey, I think it's this client's file, and I think this is a notice of a deposition at this time, but can you verify that that's what I'm looking at? And with very minimal human input, that'll get pushed into the client's file. So we went from 30 people in the mailroom to essentially 6 right now. So these are the type of, investments that firms are going to need to make, and I think a lot of lawyers, because they're classically trained, they have their head in the sand and they're like, well, I've always done it this way. I'm going to hold out as long as possible. So all they're doing is they're either shortening their own shelf life in the future, or they're ensuring that they'll never get to scale.
So, Steve, we're an immigration law firm. Tyson's a personal injury lawyer. One of the things that we've struggled with as we've grown is management. We've had a hard time sort of building out the systems and developing good managers. We sort of say, well, you're really good at this job, so you'd be a great manager at watching over the people that do what you do. What's your philosophy on management over the growth?
I have a robust management structure. We generally, govern by consensus. Obviously, if I think the team's making a wrong call, I'll override it. But, we have an executive managed team. We have I'd say there's probably 17 people in upper management and about 15 people in middle management. There's a department head, and then each department head, answers to a managing attorney of sorts. So I think management's definitely required, but I think management's job should be making sure that the KPIs that you have set, whatever those goals are being met. And then those team members are either being mentored or trained to meet those goals. And if they're not, making the difficult decision of raising to HR or to whoever makes the final call of this team member cannot hit these KPIs. And that's where you got to make difficult decisions of, do we replace this person or is it a training issue? I mean, I think most people when they show up, if they show up to get a paycheck, they're motivated, and it's usually a training issue, right? If they're not trained properly, they're not going to be motivated. So a lot of issues could be solved with a lot of extra training. But then, occasionally you get just people that just no amount of training can help them. And you got to identify those people early on and be able to replace them with people that could help the whole organization.
So, Steve, I've for a while I've been thinking about something that Seth Godin had said about, and I'll probably butcher this, but it's essentially that the future of law firms is they're for law firm marketing, it's going to be more smaller firms. People are going to sort of gravitate to the smaller firms. And I don't know if that's true. If I don't know if it is or isn't. I do know it's easier to market, I think, a smaller firm because you can kind of point to a character. People seem to be drawn to characters. If you think about people like Steve Jobs, Apple's a gigantic company, but they were primarily drawn to Steve Jobs. Now they're kind of drawn to Cook as a central figure at that company. So how are you able to market a company like Sweet James whenever it is so large? I mean, do you focus on the character? Is the marketing more towards the potential client? How do you shape your marketing so that it is the most effective?
Yeah, I mean both. But I mean, if you look at let's say our Instagram account, I mean, you'll see James is probably in 60% of the videos, and he is the central character around, our marketing. And as we've evolved and grown larger, it's essentially, quite a bit of work. I mean, he's on either live on the radio or on TV almost, every other day, and he's shooting commercials and videos, and so that's kind of taken a life of his own. I do agree with you. For us, I'd probably say it's 60% character based and 40%, just really pounding results, into the audience. Like if you're looking for results, you need to call us. So, that's generally how we handle the marketing. But I do think you need to have a differentiator, obviously, if you're marketing. And I do think it is easier for smaller solo practitioners right now, easier than it's ever been. With digital and being able to get your message out there, or whether it's paid social or free social, there's a lot of avenues to generate clients. So, and this kind of comes back to what we talked about earlier. This middle of the market's going to really fall out. You're going to have the large brands, and then you're going to have hundreds of solos with their characters that are strong in the community or in particular cities or in particular regions. So, for us, we want to be kind of one of the larger brands. I'm aware consolidation's happening. We're not scaling just for the sake of scaling. We're scaling to make sure we have a good home for all our employees and their families in the future. And to me, that requires the firm to be of a certain size.
You and your firm are clearly taking advantage of some traditional forms of media that a lot of lawyers have written off. And when you talk about radio and maybe direct, I don't know if you're doing direct mail, but can you talk about sort of the opportunities in those channels that people might be ignoring when they think they have to do everything on TikTok?
Yeah, our traditional media is probably, I'd say, 70% of our spend. This year, we're going to spend about $60 million, which is a very large number on media spend. Last year, to give you an idea, we spent about $38 million. So you can kind of get an idea of the growth. So of that $60 million, I would say TV and billboards are the number one item for the ad spend, and then followed by radio. And then I would say equivalent with radio, we spend, PPC, which last year we barely spent anything on PPC. Like maybe out of the $38 million, we might have spent $1 or $2 million. This year we're going to spend significantly more. Part of that growth in ad spend this year was really backing up our traditional spend with more digital buys. So we get a little bit higher market penetration in the areas we're in. So we're spending more on digital this year than we have ever spent. But the firm was built on a traditional trajectory. And like I said, I think partly having a catchy name, having a character like James, who's very personable. He's very, I always tell people he's like magic in a bottle. We were able to grow the firm with a traditional spend in a market like, LA. That's kind of our primary market, Southern California. And then we have a secondary hub in Phoenix. We have about 100 employees in the Phoenix office. So we were able to do it with a traditional spend.
So my question is pretty simple, but I think the answer might be a little bit more complex. Why do you think that TV and billboards are still effective? Because for me, like my brain, I used to work for a volume firm. I understand the marketing part of it. I get it. It is effective, and it's expensive. As you've demonstrated, it's extremely expensive to do. But why do you think that it still works? That's my question. Why do you think that those still work when we have all these other media outlets that they can consume all day? Why is it that TV and billboards are still working?
Because I think regardless of how famous an internet celebrity is, they're not viewed the same as a TV celebrity, as a silver screen or, your tube. So I think, I don't know, who's the guy, the most famous guy on YouTube is Mr. Beast. But if you still ask, 10 random people, I'd say 1 out of 10 might know who he is. But if you ask someone who the most famous person on TV is, 10 out of 10 people will know. So I think the credibility you get on TV is not equivalent to the type of credibility you would get on, whether it's, any of these other media. So, and people want to say, oh yeah, I hired that guy on TV. And the problem is a lot of these guys on TV, they're just marketing lawyers. So they don't know what the hell they're doing. And, I'm by no means a trial lawyer, but we have a very effective trial team that gets very big results. So for a large advertising firm, I would probably argue we probably are the largest advertising firm that's truly, we're really a litigation firm. We get big results because we push and we litigate these cases hard. And for a lot of these advertising firms, as we know, they're just more, some of them don't even have litigation shops. They're just the pre-litigation churn and burn type of a shop. So, but I think, definitely being on TV gives you a certain amount of credibility that we can't get in social. We wouldn't be able to get, we run YouTube commercials, we run paid social, Facebook, and we're everywhere with our size ad budget. And we're just not going to get that credibility in these other mediums. And I think, that's, hopefully that partly answers your question. It's just a credibility play.
Steve, please talk to us a little bit about running offices in 3 states and then deciding to open a new office in Dallas.
It's challenging. I think it comes down to your having good people and a good operations director. That's the most important thing. I definitely wouldn't be able to have these other offices without strong operations directors. And that's kind of the key position. My operations directors in both Arizona and Texas, they're non-lawyers that come from other law firms, and they've been either the COO or they've been, they're very high-level people. Now we have like a unified back office. So we have one office that handles accounting for all states. We have, one records department, so we do have unified, I call them office services. So we have an office services suite that supports all offices, and that makes it a little bit easier. So when you open an office in another state, you're not building out another accounting team and another records team and another, claims team and all of these other, pieces that you would need. So you do have to have some back office synergy, that you implement.
I find your growth to be fascinating. I think it's really cool. I think it's really neat to watch you, and I am curious to see how in the future it does seem like Morgan & Morgan's trying to come on strong. You all are coming on strong, and so I am curious to see what the next 10 years look like and looks like, and we'll find out. It's something that we're going to live through, and we'll figure it out. But I'm going to start to wrap things up. Before I do, though, you want to tell people how to reach out to you if they want to ask you any questions about the episode?
Yeah, of course. My email address is steve@sweetjames.com, steve@sweetjames.com. Feel free, if anybody wants to reach out, ask a question.
Cool name, by the way. I really like the name. All right, let's wrap things up. I do want to remind everyone to join us in the big Facebook group. Just search Maximum Lawyer. You'll be able to find us there. And then if you want to have more high-level conversations with people, we'd love to have you in the guild, maxlawguild.com. A lot of great people there. And while you're listening to the rest of this episode, while we give our tips and hacks of the week, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star review. Helps us spread the love to other attorneys all over the country. Jimmy, what's your hack of the week?
I don't know if you've talked about this book before, Tyson, but I just started a book by Daniel Coyle called The Talent Code. It's about how people think, you're just natively born with talent, and really that's not true at all. And I'm enjoying it so far, so I recommend that one.
I don't know if we have either, but it's a good suggestion. Very good. Steve, we always ask our guests to give a tip or hack of the week. It could be a podcast, it could be a book, it could be a quote, you name it. Do you have a tip or a hack for us?
Yeah, definitely. So a book that I make all my managers read, and it's kind of, I think it's very relevant to law firms, is Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. So I don't know if you guys have read that. And we also use on the mailroom side, our document management AI system is Foundation AI, ran by a guy named Vivek. He's a super smart guy. And so those are my tip is the book, and my hack is Foundation AI on the mailroom side.
Love it. Great suggestions. That's 2 guests in a row that have recommended something for AI that I'm going to have to now go and look at. So appreciate that, Steve. So my tip of the week is, we are redesigning our website, and it was really interesting is we get a lot of great designs and pretty designs, and that's fantastic. But what I keep telling them is I don't care if it's pretty. I care that if it's designed based on sound conversion principles, that's what I care about. Is it going to actually lead to clients? And so my tip is to focus whenever you're redesigning your websites on conversion, more than making it look pretty. Because there are a lot of pretty websites that will get you no cases. And so you have to be very, very careful about that. And just because you have something that's extremely unique, if they can't figure out how to get in touch with you, it means nothing. So focus on conversion as opposed to making it look pretty. That's my tip of the week. All right, Steve, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I would love to bend your ear more in the future because I think it's really cool, the things that you're doing. I think we can all learn a lot from you. And thanks for coming on and sharing some of your knowledge.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Tyson.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. To stay in contact with your hosts and to access more content, go to MaximumLawyer.com. Have a great week and catch you next time.
Before you go, have you heard Jim and Tyson talk about the Guild on the podcast or in the Facebook group? If not, you're missing out on some really exciting things happening with Guild members and their law firms. The Guild includes a community, accountability, trainings, group coaching, and in-person events like our quarterly masterminds. Inside, you'll gain support, tap into a network of connections, and continue learning, a common theme among successful entrepreneurs. Investing in a community is like the self-care of business ownership. Surrounding yourself with other people who get it is crucial when you're creating a rock-solid foundation to build your business on, one that's strong enough to withstand setbacks, transitions, and growth. So head to MaximumLawyer.com/the Guild to join now and get started today.